Week one is in the books. Well, I guess technically there's still one game left, but the main slate for week one is in the books. And honestly, I don't think it disappointed. We didn't really have like any massive go off games except for Kansas City and Cleveland definitely was up there. And there's some other good teams who hit some pretty high team totals, but nothing too crazy. I wanted to spend a little bit of time just going over my contest selection, the lineups that I played, my thought process around them. So we'll dive into a couple different contests that I played, like some single entry stuff like the Spy, some random other lineups. I'll kind of run through some like 20 max MME stuff that I played. We'll take a look at how some professionals played in the Fantasy Labs contest dashboard. I'm going to review a couple of the lineups that you guys submitted as well. So I think a good place to start is probably just underneath my lineups here in the Fantasy Labs My Lineups Manager. And this is just something once I have everything settled, I just export out of DraftKings and import them into Fantasy Labs here, just so I can take a look at my exposures. Now, you'll notice you might see like some Odell Beckham in here. Obviously, I didn't play Odell Beckham once the news broke. It was pretty easy to swap off of him. I made sure that I had salary for that and was able to do those types of things. So if we take a look at my exposures here, you guys can see some of my highest owned players. I'll sort by buy-ins right now. So Raheem Mostert, I had a little under $800 on. Pittman, a little under $800 on. Kyle Pitts, a little under $700 on. Mix in Elijah Moore, Tyreek Hill, Mahomes, start to round it out there. Look, when your three highest owned guys, or the and I think they might have actually been my highest owned too, or close to it. But when the three guys that you have the most amount of money on combine for what, 7 points? I don't even know if it was that, right. Usually not shaping up to be a good day. The Raheem Mostert stuff, I think I think one of the biggest edges that we still have is late news and reacting to it. Now, when I immediately started to project Raheem Mostert and do a couple simulations and just removing Trey Sermon out of the picture for what I thought Trey Sermon would probably still see, like a 40 to 43% market share of his team's opportunities at the running back position. When you remove that and you just now have Raheem Mostert, Elijah Mitchell, and oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the other running back there. Preseason hero. I can't think of his name. You still have a Shanahan backfield where I wasn't just giving Raheem Mostert 90% of his team touches. This wasn't a Christian McCaffrey scenario, right? Like that's just not going to happen. But I bumped Raheem Mostert up to about 70% market share of his opportunities. Even if that wasn't the case, even if we still thought Raheem Mostert was going to see 60% to 65%, which I would say is a small bump from his initial market share of projection, market share of touches and opportunities in that offense for me, the news alone is worth being overweight. You're going to have your sharps reacting properly, but you're going to have a lot of the field sleeping on that and not knowing how to build around at literally an hour before lock. I mean, that came out maybe 55 minutes before lineups locked. That's a lot for people to process. They don't know what to do, and so I think that there's just a massive edge there. So that was my justification or my process around being so heavy on Raheem Mostert. Is he a smash play if he doesn't get hurt? Probably. I think he's 25 DK points, give or take. Based off of what that offense did and how they ran and what the other running backs did, we obviously can't just say that Raheem is going to capture all of that. But I mean, if you look at some of those runs, there was just massive holes. Anyone's driving a truck through there, right? So Little bit of run bad there on Raheem for sure, but it is what it is. Pittman, I really liked the Seattle game. In my article, Concise Conviction, I'll show you guys here. This was my favorite under-owned game stack, right? So I really thought that the Bills and the Cardinals and the Titans would be pretty heavily owned. And then I really, really liked this Russell Wilson, and Pittman was the easy bring back for me there. So you'll notice, let me just find Russ here. Looks like I've got $388 worth of buy-ins with this Russell, DK, Pittman, and Lockett. And I was pretty high on Lockett, where I had Lockett even in lineups where I wasn't stacked. And I mentioned that here in a core play. Obviously had some guys bust my core plays as well, but I tweeted all that out. This isn't like me touting one random guy. Like, you guys will get the good and the bad from me. But Lockett was a guy who I really liked, even outside of the stack. So that being said, Pittman was attached to everything. I mean, I had the over on Pittman, player prop on underdog. I just had a lot of money on him here on DraftKings, and it didn't pan out. I don't hate this process though. I think this is fine. You have a big-bodied wide receiver here in a game that I thought could play up in pace, and was honestly a great under-owned game stack, and it did end up being that. So if we take a look back at DraftKings, I don't even know where I have those. I assume I'm gonna have at least one in a power sweep. It's afternoon, 3 max. That's the 50K though. Here, I probably have one in this. Let's show only mine. Yeah, so here, 7% in this 1500. I think this is the 1500 person field, right? With just the 50K up top. Yeah, this should be the 1500 person field right there. These were the three lineups that I made in it. But back to my Russ. I just I genuinely thought that this was an extremely good spot. Nothing that I can do about Mostert. Titans here for me in this lineup specifically was like everyone's playing Kyler. I just thought I'd leverage the field. I think you're flipping coins at defense most of the time anyways, so I might as well just take a stance here. I knew I was going to eat a little bit of chalk with Kyle Pitts and with Raheem Mostert. So I was trying to be a little bit different at defense. And then the stacks in week one, I think you're just going to see things condensed because people are getting so much information from so many different places. As we get into week two and week three, I think we'll see people land on more condensed. Quarterback ownership in general is always going to be a little bit flat, but I still think we'll see a more condensed ownership throughout quarterback position as we come into week two. Let's take a look at another one of my lineups here. Okay, so here's the story for me. Full dust on headed into the late slates. I mean, like losing 80%. I must have been returning like $350. That's when you have Pitts, Pittman, and Raheem Mostert as three of your highest owned. But I got an absolute ceiling outcome from my Mahomes teams. And this was something that I started to come onto a little later in the week, probably like Saturday. I was really sitting around contemplating, building, trying to get a really good feel for the slate. And I just thought that there were so many unknowns, and everyone is dealing with unknowns, right? So it's not like I have more of an edge or less of an edge than anyone else out there. But one thing that kept coming back to me was, okay, well, what do I have a what do I think I know more? Because obviously it's all about what do I think I know, not what do I actually know, because none of us know anything when it comes to these NFL coaches and teams. We like to think we do, and sometimes we run good, but in this case, I was right with Kansas City. What has Kansas City and Andy Reid done? Dude, they're just gas. constant gas. I mean, constant gas. And my model really, really liked Tyreek Hill from a leverage rating standpoint. Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey, and like a Landry or Odell Beckham was one of the highest ceiling outcomes from a stack from a ceiling projection. So if you looked at ceiling projections and you went by game stacks, they had the highest ceiling projection. So that's great for me. Ownership looked great, and I got the stone nut outcome with all of them hitting their 99th percentile outcome. I mean, for Tyreek Hill to break that 70-yard TD and slightly busted coverage is just like total total variance in my way. And I ended up making money on the slate. I should have been dusted. I should have been absolutely dusted. I was in for 2K, ended up being out for 3, and 2K because the afternoon slate, which you don't see here, ended up being out for 3, and made money on the early slate and on the late slate. So it wasn't just like the late slate covered me. It was I ran super super hot with that, especially considering how much I had of those 3 guys. So this was another game stack that I liked was Carolina. All off season, not only have I, but a lot of people have been saying that Sam Darnold will be able to support multiple pass catchers in this offense. And I thought it was a great matchup against the Jets. I thought Elijah Moore or Corey Davis were great bringbacks. I ended up on a ton of Elijah Moore because of 3K. I thought that he was a much better play than Callaway and a much better play than Marvin Jones Jr. And y'all who played Marvin Jones Jr. in tournaments, I want you to understand how hot you ran. I mean, I'm not like, calling anyone out or anything. I just think you have to understand how hot you ran at a 30+% owned wide receiver who had 11 points headed into the final drive of the fourth quarter, where I honestly I think he scored like 7 to 8 DK points on that final drive. And great, take it. I'm the same way that I got Tyreek's ceiling outcome, take it. But I just want people to understand that the process on playing that kind of a wide receiver in a game environment where honestly it should have played out a little bit more to James Robinson's favor and a little less pass happy. It was great to see Trevor Lawrence support those wide receivers, and I think that's worth noting and going forward. But like people who played Marvin Jones Jr. in tournaments definitely ran hot, and I think got bailed out based off of process. In my opinion, remember these are all just my opinions. Um, and we'll take a look at some pros, people who do this for a living. But yeah, that was kind of my main thoughts around the slate were Jalen, Kyler, Atlanta, all great. And then Kansas City and Seattle, the two overlooked and under-owned game stacks, which I just think had massive, massive upside. And honestly, if I get 20 out of Mostert, it's probably like a 5 or 6x day for me. And that is what it is. The Mostert process I thought was sound. Like I said, news is massive. Like the fact that Mostert was only 30+% owned, depending on depending on your contest. Let's take a look. 35% owned in this power sweep. This is like a 50 to 60% player to me. I think that's how much the field should have been on him. And I think the field ran extremely hot, or I think that 65% of the field ran very hot by not rostering him and him getting hurt. He should have had a smash game, like Joe Mixon style game, catching passes, scoring touchdowns, heavily involved, high. Like San Francisco put up what 40+ points. I mean, out of control, right? So also, how about that that Jared Goff led backdoor cover? That was insane. When there's news late. I'm not talking Saturday news. I'm not talking Friday news. I'm not talking Shefty tweets at 12 a.m. I'm talking news that absolutely shifts the landscape of the slate 60 to 90 minutes before the slate locks. That's the type of news that you want to capitalize on and is extremely plus EV long term to understand how to react to that news. And for me, that was I had to. I mean, like I literally hit up a couple people who I was talking to about the slate, and I was just like, "Hey, I gotta go dark. It's time to build." And um, talk to a professional player who plays tons and tons and tons of volume. 6 figures plus a slate, and we were talking about Raheem Mostert in the sense of, well, yeah, but Kyle Shanahan, like we knew there was going to be a split backfield even with the Trey Sermon stuff, and I don't like I said, I think even if you only wanted to project Raheem Mostert for like 63.5 to 65% market share of opportunities, it was absolutely still worth being 2 to 3x the field on a running back who should be heavily involved. So I just like the news alone is worth it. It was crazy is he was very owned on FanDuel where he was a lot cheaper, but not as owned on DraftKings. So look, let me know if you think I'm wrong on the Raheem stuff, regardless of the outcome. Leave a comment down below, and let's definitely talk about it because I would love to have an open minded conversation about why maybe I overreacted. I don't think I did, but I definitely could be wrong there. Let's take a look at the Fantasy Labs contest dashboard and pull up like the luxury box here and take a look. And dude, the whistle goes woo, man. What a heater. I mean, from like shipping the NFL final, a couple months ago to shipping a million on a baseball contest like at the end of August, or maybe it was the end of July, to now looks like he absolutely had a great week 1 slate. Let's take a look at his winning lineup here. Kansas City stack, no Raheem Mostert. Wow, Marquez Callaway. This he didn't bring anyone back. Okay, so like immediately to me, um, and it's always hard to say this when somebody just won 180 grand on it, but this is not that good of a lineup. I don't understand how there's not a single Cleveland like play Kareem Hunt instead of Mike Davis. I don't know, or this is kind of a strange lineup to me. But I guess it got the job done. The Deontay Harris stuff I think is great. Like that is a phenomenal pivot off of Marquez Callaway, but he also played Marquez Callaway. Honestly, probably just hoping to grab at least one touchdown from minimum price. I see this happening in these smaller fields where they just play both of the wide receivers. I've seen it for a while. I don't know how plus EV it is in larger. Actually, it's not plus EV in larger fields. In these smaller fields, right, 370 entries, I think onslaughts are fine. This doesn't make a ton of like. I would have, if you're gonna play Deontay Harris, I would have preferred Donovan Peoples-Jones here from Cleveland and run it back over Callaway. Like I I guess. I don't know. It's just something along those lines. Wow, he played both of them again. Wow, he played LaVisca and Marvin Jones. Yeah, so he's definitely, and he didn't bring anyone back with Minnesota. Very strange. All 3 receivers from Joe Burrow and nobody from Minnesota. Like Thielen just seems like the perfect play. Or getting to Justin Jefferson, but salary, I mean, maybe off of Kamara or something, but obviously Kamara's Kamara. Yeah, look, I'm actually not a fan of these lineups. He clearly, I think, I think, I think he ran hot here. In all honesty, and I know that's very strange for me to say. It sounds weird. Somebody who myself who doesn't play professionally criticizing somebody who does and who just won He honestly looks like he probably shipped a slate if he had this stuff other places too. These are very, very strange. Did he play anyone like no Cooks in these Lawrence? Wow, he's literally not bring. Okay, he brought it back here with no, he didn't. Oh, yes, he did with Hopkins. Nobody from weird lineups, in all honesty. Let's take a look at Wilson. Wilson's another very, very sharp player. Please, okay, thank you. See, here's a good lineup. Mahomes, Kelsey, Jarvis Landry, great mini stack. Damian Harris, great pivot off of like a Mike Davis or something along those lines, a goal line back like Damian Harris. Paid up at defense, which is going to just be a little bit unique in general. Got up to tight end away from Pitts. Like I think this is a phenomenal lineup. Very, very good lineup based off of construction, ownership. Look, eating some chalk. You ran hot, Wilson, like I said, eating some chalk with Raheem Mostert, and then made some great pivots off of like Elijah Moore chalk. So this is my only knock here. I think people ran hot, but this is smaller field, 370 person entry. It's okay to eat chalk like that, and I literally I talk about that in my article about it's absolutely okay in smaller field tournaments to play some chalk. I think it's definitely not time to feel scared of fading the chalk, but remember, it's okay to eat a little bit chalk at the running back position. I'm not. You guys are gonna have to convince me on Marvin Jones in tournaments. 20% here. So I guess if he was projecting, maybe for a little bit of lower ownership, then this makes sense at 370 person field. So I don't hate Marvin Jones in a smaller tournament like this. In larger field stuff, I think it's bad. So Kyler, DeAndre, AJ Brown, pretty standard stuff there. Um, Mike Davis, Antonio Gibson. Wow, the Corey Davis stuff. Great, great work with Corey Davis, Wilson. Looks like Wilson was profitable in here. 11 lineups, 5K in winnings. Let's take a look. If I go to my favorites here, I love looking at JK stuff. He didn't run it back either. Am I missing something? Kansas City with no Cleveland. Jalen Hurts. Okay, there's Atlanta. Wow, I don't know. That this is very I do not think this is plus EV in the long term. I mean, I really, really don't. I get this is fine, but like play Donovan Peoples-Jones if you need to punt, right? I mean, I'm trying to find places. Play Kareem Hunt over Moser. I would not have done that. I probably wouldn't have played Eckler, and I would have played Kareem Hunt. Um, in a game, if you think this game is going to pace and you think that it's going to just smash it's over, like Kareem Hunt is a great running back in that spot. Very weird. This is interesting though. Full punts at all three wide receiver positions. Full punts. Yeah, I don't know. Two chalky wide receivers. I think, he definitely made some pivots at running back. So this is weird. These guys aren't running this back nearly as much as they should be. I would love to know thought process here. Um, Take a look at Peter. Full onslaught. There we go, Peter. Thank you. Tannehill, Chase Edmonds, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Brown, Julio Jones. This is what I typically expect to see from Peter. Probably 2 to 3 really chalky positions, and then really, really good pivots like a Chase Edmond or a Devontae Smith. Julio, I think it was a really sharp play in this Arizona and Tennessee game. I mean, you just imagine if this is 26 instead of 13, and one of these guys comes down with another touchdown, Tannehill has another touchdown. Like, it's just a totally, totally different outcome. It's pacing better. Very strange outcome there. So, anyways, let's go back to a couple more contests that I entered here, and I'll kind of talk you through my process. So I pretty much stick to three max single entry, and then I'll definitely play like some qualifiers, some other random contests. I fire into the Millie Maker contest, the stuff that I'm making, but with much less intent of actually winning and more along the lines of I'm going to embrace some of this variance and I'll be sick to my stomach if I land on the stone nuts. It's probably negative EV. I do change to like what I'm playing in this 1,500 person field single entry is I will not play that exact same lineup in the Millie Maker. I will go import that lineup, but I won't do like a full on. If it's a full onslaught, I won't. I'll remove it. You have to be so perfect in that it really makes sense to just use a quarterback, a pass catcher, and one opposing pass catcher, and then having some mini correlation like maybe Tyler Lockett and Pittman, if you stacked Kansas City or something along those lines. So like I would not play. Although this lineup I would probably play, right, because it's just Mahomes, Hill, and Landry. Yeah, this is a lineup that I probably just left in the Millie Maker because it's not a full onslaught. But I think if you were just like taking your cash lineup and sending and just hitting import into one of these $50 single entries with like 1,500 people or 3,000 people or 5,000 people, I think you're paying the rake. I think it's dead money, and you should definitely get a lot more unique. And the people who are like who tell you, don't forget to put your cash line up in a tournament just in case. You're just in case of realizing your equity and return on your investment is going to be years and years and years and years, and not it's not plus EV at all. You should take that lineup, keep your core, and pivot to some really good low ownership, high leverage plays, and then your EV shoots up through the roof just by making 3 to 4 pivots off of your cash lineup. Don't just hit enter. I can't stress that enough. So what I do, I don't play the same. So let's say I'm playing three different three max 150 power sweeps, right? I don't play the same three lineups, the same three lineups, the same three lineups. I play three lineups in one of the power sweeps, and then I make a completely different set of three lineups and a completely different set of three lineups. And I'll cater those towards the field size a little bit, but I'm just hoping to win one of those. If the one in the smaller one is where it's only 10K up top, would have won the one for 100K. You move on. It is what it is. I actually think that I came close to that here. In one of my single entries where it ended up in like a smaller one where it was only like 2K up top, and it would have won 15K in another one. So it is what it is. Definitely is what it is. Got invited to this random contest. Let's see. I think this was my Russell team. Even with Raheem Mostert, still ended up taking it down. Um, which is great. This is just like a small person. I think ended up with like 10 people in it. And I did the full onslaught. Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Michael Pittman. Ate a lot of chalk with Kyle Pitts. And once again, Raheem Mostert in a 10-person field size. Only 3 people had it. This is what I'm talking about. These are casual players, except for Ivana. He plays a lot everywhere. These are all casual players, like just friends that I have. Every single one of them is casual players. He's only owned in 3 different lineups. So I think that kind of hits my point on reacting to late news. So I think that's probably a good insight. This video is getting long, so like for those of you who are still here listening to me ramble about a slate that's already happened, hopefully that's some good insight for you guys on just my general thought process, how I approach the slate, what it looks like for my personal contest selection, and just where I kind of land. I think I might be on something on Wednesday, and then Friday rolls around or Saturday rolls around, and I just am like, well, actually, that's probably not the sharpest play. Like that stuff is going to happen as we get more information. I mean, it's no different than looking at your whole cards and then the flop comes and now everything changes, right? You can put your player on a range that he might be three betting with, but that flop comes and you have all new information. That is kind of like what it is from Wednesday to Saturday night or even Sunday morning. Is that's the flop, and you're playing that next street, and there's so much new information that you have to make changes. People are publishing content, and I'm just like, wow, nobody's talking about this Kansas City game. This is just such a good spot. That's kind of what happened, right? So that's how I ended up on Kansas City, um, a little bit more than where I was originally in the week. Even though I talked about Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, like they were always in the back of my mind. I just decided to get a lot more money down on them because I really thought that that was a good spot. And Raheem Mostert kept me from winning all the monies. What are you going to do? Tell you what, let's do a quick look ahead at week 1 here. No, not Showdown, Captain Mode. I wish we got primetime slates back. Those are the best. Take a look at this Millie. Take a quick look at these salaries. Kyler leading the slate. Jalen against San Francisco down here at 6,500. Here we go. Back to Tannehill. Back to Tannehill after letdown in Seattle. Although the Seattle will probably draw some ownership. Wonder what those totals are. Vegas. We might not have this slate up yet. Okay, yeah, we don't. I bet you that will probably carry a high total. You know what I was looking at too? I think, yeah, there it is. Higher total, probably a higher total. Minnesota, Arizona, probably a higher total. Dallas Chargers, probably a higher total. There's a lot of higher totals in the late slate. So swaps might be a little bit more difficult just because you'll be running into a lot of opponents who still have PMR going in the late slate, as I assume, we will as well, just due to some of those totals being in the later slate. That'll be interesting from a swap equity perspective. Um, that's something that I didn't talk about. I made a handful of swaps on those Raheem Mostert teams to players like T. Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones, and just like Damian Harris on one or two teams where I had a run, like where I just thought it was going to be very low owned because I knew I was dead in a lot of stuff. I knew that I still had a lot of Mahomes, but in that game or that game stack, but I knew like I absolutely had to make up. And so like swapping the T. Higgins in places did not work out. Sorry, Rashard Higgins on Cleveland. Swapping to Donovan Peoples-Jones did not work out, but that's fine. I was already dead. So could you imagine if T. Higgins or if Rashard Higgins has 767 and 1, it's like something insane like that, or 7 and 109 and 1 where he bust one. It's just like I lapped the field. I mean, I'm already getting that a little bit with Tyler Boyd from a leverage standpoint, but just like with Rashard Higgins, I lapped the field. Donovan Peoples-Jones lapped the field. So don't forget to make those swaps when you're looking at those dead lineups. But yeah, some of these salaries look pretty interesting. Who got up there? Still CMC, Kamara. Wow, Kamara CMC. Ooh, Austin Eckler in Dallas after coming off a 0-catch game. See a lot of pace in that game for sure. That should be fun. At $7,300, also Eckler getting some goal line carries. You love to see it. Who plays Cincinnati? I tweeted this last night, But I mean, these wide receivers, 5,400, 5K, 4,700, I expect there to be some condensed ownership around these guys right here, especially with Joe Burrow being 5,800 and coming off Matt Stafford just torching them on a primetime game. Should be some condensed ownership there. But hey, look, I'll try and keep these shorter in the future. This was the first one. I just kind of wanted to give a big overview of everything. And hopefully you guys found it somewhat beneficial to your process. If you have questions, drop a comment down below. I'm always responding to them, always seeing them. There's some other videos on the Fantasy Labs YouTube channel here going over like the optimizer and custom models. I highly encourage you to check those out as well. But with that, I will see you guys in the next one, and run good in week 2.